If you play a tone on any instrument, let's name it tone number 1, and then double the frequency, you get harmonically the same tone, but it sounds twice as high. This is called an octave. In the European influenced musical parts of the world, which probably includes you if you are watching this English video, there are 11 other tones which fit in between our tone 1 and the octave of our tone 1. Let's name them 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on, like this. These steps from one tone to the next are called half steps. If you select 7 of these 12 tones within the octave while following 2 rules, you get something which is called a tone scale. The rules are, rule number 1, you can only skip one tone at a time. And rule number 2, if you don't skip a tone, then you have to skip the next one. For example, depending on where you skip or don't skip the tones, you end up with a different scale name. This particular scale from this example, for example, is named the natural minor scale. These scales are the basis of the European influenced music. If you want to write a basic song, you need to know a few more things. Songs are structured with something named chords. And in general, every collection of tones played at the same time is a chord. And in general, there is no limitation on how many chords you can use for a song. Nevertheless, there are some rules for a basic song which can help. How to choose your chords. Once you pick the scale for your song, you can pick a random tone from the scale and then skip the next, pick the next, skip the next, and pick the next. The first tone you picked is called the root of the chord, like this. I choose 4 as the root. This, for example, would be a major chord. A basic song is normally composed out of 2 to 4 chords, which repeat in patterns. Sometimes you have the pattern for the whole song, or you have, for example, a pattern for the verse and a pattern for the chorus, and so on. There are rules for the sound and feeling effects depending on the combination of chords you choose, but that is not the basics of the basics anymore. For now, just remember that you can choose the chords randomly, as long as you stay in your scale. If you do so, you will probably notice that you get a problem if you want to take, for example, the 9 for the root, because your scale is not long enough. This is not a real problem because you can just start the scale again at the 1, like this. How to write a melody. Let's say you picked 2 chords, the one on the 4 and the one on the 9. So your pattern is to play the one on the 4 and then the one on the 9 and then start the whole thing again. To write a melody over these chords, it's good to know where the stress beats are. If you don't know how to count to a song, then you probably have to go to another video and learn this at this point. But in a normal 4/4 rhythm, the stress beats are normally on the 1 and the 3. So now the 1 and the 3 don't stand for the tones, they stand for the counting times. Like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. When you choose tones for the melody, you can choose any tone at any time you want. But if you want to make sure that it sounds at least okay, then only pick tones out of the scale. If you want to make sure that it sounds harmonic all the time, then only pick tones which belong to the chord which is played at the moment, if the tone is placed on a stressed beat. If you play just random tones, this could probably sound like this. you take your tones out of the scale, but don't take into account which chord is played at the moment, this could probably sound like this. And if you take your tones out of the scale and take into account which chord is played at the moment, this could probably sound like this. Naming of the tones and chords. The naming of the tones is historically grown. And in most cases we have the tone at 440 Hz named an A. The rest of the tones are named as follows. From a basic logic perspective, these names are completely random. And it's important to notice that there is no such thing as a special characteristic to any of these tones. The harmonic relevance of the tones is only defined by their relation to each other. For example, the E is defined as the frequency of the A multiplied with 3/2. And the A, the one octave higher one, is defined as the frequency of the A multiplied with 2. You can find lists of these definitions and the problems popping up with these definitions in the internet, but it's only important to understand the idea of the definitions. The actual numbers are completely irrelevant for making music. And before we start with the names of the chords, I have to introduce you to another very important thing, the intervals. The difference, or the steps from one tone to another, is called an interval. You can see the naming of these intervals as spread up into two accuracy levels. The rough level works like this. You look at the scale, take two tones out of the scale and count the tones in between these two tones, including the tones itself, like this. There are 3 tones in between the 3 and the 6, including the 3 and the 6, so this is called a third. The accurate level works like this. You take all the tones you have, take 2 tones, and count the tones in between these 2 tones, including the tones itself, like this. There are 4 tones in between the 3 and the 6, including the 3 and the 6, and this is called a minor third. If you are wondering, apart from the relation to the rough level, you have to learn these names of the accurate level by heart. But the really important ones are these. Now we can finally give names to the chords. There are many different chords, but the most important ones are the minor and the major chords. They are named after the first interval in the chord. So if you play a chord which starts with a 3 and the next tone is a 6, then this is a minor chord, because the interval is a minor third. If you take the same chord and add an 11, you get a minor sixth chord, because the interval between the 3 and the 11 is a sixth, with the rough naming system. The naming of the chords often follows this pattern. So first, you say the name of the root tone. Here it's a 3, which is equal to a B in our case. Second, you say if it's minor or major. And third, you take the rough naming system and look which other intervals are in the chord. So we would have a B minor sixth in our example. That's it. I hope it was easy to understand, and whether it was or not, I would be happy about some feedback. And of course, if you think that it's easy to understand, then I would be happy if you would spread it into the world.